to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and I'm so glad that we don't do straight reactions right after the game, because that would be not so fun for everybody. But maybe some of you listeners, maybe that's what you're into. Just watch a game, don't even digest it, and go straight in for calling for everybody's jobs. But that's not how I like to approach things, and I'm sure we're all still disappointed with Union's 3-1 loss to Toronto FC last night, especially when you look at it. Cincinnati came back and won against Atlanta down at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. New England Revolution win last night, and now we see the Union in fourth place because Orlando City had one as well. Things are super tight right now in the Eastern Conference, and the Union still have a game in hand on Cincinnati as well as Orlando City. So, I'm not too worried about the Union where they're currently at in the standings, because anything can happen. We still have 9 games to go. New York Red Bulls on Sunday, and I'm sure I'll mention something about the Red Bull game later on in the podcast, but I don't think it's time to panic yet. I think there's plenty of games for the Union to make up ground and stay in the top 4. I think that should be the goal, right? I think that's what all Union fans should be hoping for, is 4th or higher in the Eastern Conference. Is there a chance for the Supporters' Shield? Is there a chance to finish first in the East? Slightly. A slight chance. It's going to take a lot for Cincinnati to come down to earth. You thought it would happen last night against Atlanta. It does not. Brendan Vasquez, Lucci Acosta, their 2 main men, just continuing to carry FC Cincinnati. And shout out to Pat Noonan for finally winning Manager of the Match Day. Is that what we're calling it? I don't know. I haven't done one of those in so long. That's what we're calling it. Not Team of the Week. It's Team of the Match Day, right? So Pat Noonan somehow, 57 points, had not won Manager of the Match Day all season long, gets it last night for his comeback victory against Atlanta United. So we'll go back and talk some news. There's really only one news point I want to talk about really quick. Give my thoughts on Toronto, Philadelphia Union. Go ahead and talk 3 stars. Maybe discuss the goals a little bit. Then Blunder of the week, and then we'll end this podcast. And don't forget, because we're recording this podcast on a Thursday, because the Red Bull game is on a Sunday, that means most of you guys are probably listening to this podcast Friday morning, which means no match preview episode for the New York Red Bulls game, which I told you guys last episode. So a lot of you guys were familiar with that, but maybe you guys didn't listen to the last episode. Now you guys are all caught up. So without further ado, let's get straight into the news. All right, so the only thing I want to get people caught up with is last night on MLS 360, Tom Bogert announced that Barcelona has agreed a deal with LAFC to sign center back Ball. The 20-year-old Senegalese center back is going on loan to Barcelona with a purchase option. The option could be north of $7 million, including add-ons, Tom's reports. Don't forget, last season, LAFC loaned out Fall to La Liga side Villarreal. He played 1 game for the La Liga club, played 25 games last season with their second team. And Tom also reports that Villarreal are trying to get a deal done, but the player prefers to go to Barcelona, which can't blame him, right? It's all players' dreams to play for Real Madrid or Barcelona. So LAFC look to be capitalizing on good scouting once again and a lot of money coming their way for a player that made over 40 appearances for their club. So that's everything we want to talk about news-wise. Told you guys super fast. So let's go ahead and talk about Toronto versus Philadelphia Union. Again, I'll repeat the score, 3-1. Should not have been a 3-1 game. And for a game to start so bright for the Union to go the way that it did, you're kind of lost for words. Well, at least I am. A couple good chances for the Union early on off of corner kicks. Bedoya and Elliott both win headers, but can't get good connection on the ball and put it on frame. Kai Wagner played a beautiful ball into Julian Kranza, who does well to bring the ball down, but he sees the shot blocked by Petrita. That had to be a goal right there, in my opinion. There's no reason why Julian shouldn't have put that shot on frame. I know it was blocked. But to make that run for Kai Wagner to see the run, for Julian to trap the ball down as well as he did and not to get a goal, it's a huge missed opportunity. And you want to go ahead and talk about more opportunities? You know, there were a couple more opportunities early on in this game. And then the 25th minute, you know, you see the Union turn Toronto over in their own half, kind of like we saw against DC United last week. We have Gazdag on the ball. He tries to play the ball into Uwa, who's making a run to his left, and the ball is behind Uwa. And so then Uwa cuts the ball back to Gazdag, and Gazdag sees his shot blocked. And then afterwards, it becomes all Toronto after the Union allowed them to get back into the game. And we started to see Toronto getting Insigne and Bernadeschi on the ball more. Kai Wagner and Olivier Baiza were dribbled past a total of 5 times in this game, which isn't good enough. On the first goal that Toronto scored, Glesnes gives the ball away poorly, trying to pass to Martinez. Looked like a pass at least. Maybe he tried to clear it and it was a misclear. Elliott was poor when defending Kerr, and Glesnes lost track of Insigne. Wagner on the second goal gets split by a ball that's behind him to Bernadeschi. Elliott gets a foot on it, but Kerr turns Glesnes, and there's Toronto's second goal of the night. On the third goal, no pressure once again by the Union's midfielders. Too much time and space on the ball for the Toronto players. Osorio makes a splitting run between Baizo and Glesnes. And that's all she wrote. Just not good enough. The worst team in MLS. The Union let them end their 11-game unbeaten run. And it's typical, right? After a strong performance against DC United, a game where you had multiple opportunities to score, even though you scored 3 goals, you have multiple opportunities to score against Toronto, and you don't score them. The XG, and I know XG doesn't tell everything in this game, but the Union won this XG battle 2.2 to Toronto's 1.8. Toronto scored 3 goals, Union scored 1. And majority of that XG came because of that play I was talking about with Julian Kranza in the 8th minute. Should have scored that. Jack Elliott had a header. Should have finished that. Just so many missed opportunities in this game by the Union. And there's actually brought up a really good point by myself before we decided to record this podcast. I was like, you know what? Let's go ahead and look at the Union's shooting over the last 5 years. Because last night, the Union only had 12% of their shots on target. And you go ahead and look. The last 5 years, the Union averaged 37.2% of the shots on target. And now they're down to an average of 32.7 this season. That's a huge drop off from their average. Now they're below average at 32.7. And this is something that, at the time I wasn't thinking about after the game. It's definitely something I'm going to ask Jim Curtin about on Friday at his press conference. I want to get his thoughts on why the Union can't hit the target. Because it's ridiculous. Looking at this team just not performing the way that they have over the last 5 years. Everything's down. Goals are down at 43, and I know there's still 9 games to be played, so expect that number probably will be in the 50s. Shots, 339. That's probably going to be up towards the low 400s, I would say. Shots on target, currently at 111. 32.7% shots on target. And shots on target resulting in goals, 38.7. So actually, that's not too bad. But that's only because the Union haven't taken a ton of shots. I believe they're around mid-table in MLS this season with shots taken per game. So, are they the most clinical team? I would say so. When the shots are on target, yeah. Basically, at 39% of their shots on target are goals. But are a lot of their shots on target? Absolutely not. They're taking a lot of wasteful shots. And it's not good enough. Looking at the front three, Kranza leads all players with shots on target with 39.7, and he takes a ton of shots. I think he's at 65, 66 for this season. And there's a lot of missed opportunities by Julian Kranza. Would see him at 39.7% of shots on target this season. It's decent. You'll take it. Mikael Ua at 34%. Daniel Gazdag, 32.4%. And let me remind you guys, that number is inflated because of all the shots on target from his penalty kicks. So that number would be a lot lower for shots on target from Daniel Gazdag if it wasn't for those converted penalties. And I've seen people say, maybe Daniel Gazdag should be dropped because 9 of his 10 goals this season are from the penalty spot. No. You don't drop a guy just because he's not scoring from open play. You have nobody on this team that can play the number 10 role. Or at least nobody on this roster that is going to put in the defensive shift like Daniel Gazdag does. Some more numbers for you guys if you guys aren't bored yet. The Union have 5 games this season with under 20% of shots on target. 5 games under 20%. That's terrible. And I think 11 games with under 30% of shots on target. And we've played 25 games so far this season. Almost half of the Union's games are less than 30% or less shots on target. It's not good. And I'm mad at myself because I wish I could have had a soundbite for you guys this episode to play Jim Curtin's thoughts on that. But I'll definitely get it tomorrow at his press conference and really get his thoughts because it's unacceptable. The lowest shots on target game this season came against DC United at Subaru Park, 6.7. And I remember Jim was pretty irate after that game. Didn't create enough. And when they did have shooting opportunities, the shots were blocked or They would just waste it. Kind of like what happened last night against Toronto. It's not been good offensively from this team. They're not creating as many chances. They're not taking as many shots. And the shots that they are taking aren't on target. I mean, that number, 32.7% of shots on target, that's unacceptable. If you're not going to shoot the ball a ton, then at least make sure you're hitting the target. And the Union aren't even doing that. 12%, I said last night against Toronto. 5 games I've had this season under 20% of shots on target. 11 games under 30%. It's an issue, right? Just like it's an issue that the Union concede every single time first on the road. I don't have the answers. I would assume people listening to this podcast probably don't have the answers, because if they did, Jim Curtin's probably calling you up, adding you to the coaching staff to figure out, all right, how do we correct this issue? Am I mad that the Union lost against Toronto? No, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed because of the uncharacteristic mistakes defensively. A team that could not find the target last night. How many shots came off the post? How many headers did the Union win last night? They're not capitalizing on the chances they're creating. And credit to Kai Wagner last night for his deliveries on set pieces. And Jack McGlynn when he started taking them as well. Their set pieces are fine. But people aren't putting the ball on target. And I get it, right? The Union's goal in the night came off of a throw-in. Great hold-up play, by the way, by Mikkel Ua. Terrific ball in to Julian Kranz. It looked like Bedoya may have got a flick one to the back post to Julian Kranz, who was unmarked. Good work set piece. But there was just a lot of missed opportunities last night off of set pieces in chances from open play. And I'm going to go ahead and play one of 2 sound bites from Jim Curtin about the team's performance last night.
There's a lot of things that, we should have been prepared for and realize we're going to get a good effort from Toronto. But then when you look at the first half, just watch and recount the amount of passes that we made directly to Toronto, not under any pressure, tons of time and space where it looks like we have something good going forward. And we just pass the ball directly to them, and it leads to us having to run and chase and work and win the ball back. So the best way I can put it, guys, is we had a big opportunity tonight to make plays. We didn't make plays that could have flipped the game, especially early in the game. And like good professional teams do, regardless of where they're on the table, they punish you. So we got punished. We have to regroup quickly. We have to bounce back, and I know we will at home against Red Bull.
So is Jim saying that the Union aren't a good professional team? They created opportunities. They just didn't punish Toronto. Toronto took advantage of the Union's uncharacteristic mistakes. This game should have been dead within the first 10, 15 minutes. Union should have been up by 2 goals. Probably 3 goals after they turned Toronto over in their own half. And that's another thing, too, that the Union didn't take advantage of is pressing Toronto hard out of their back. We saw a lot of success when Toronto was at Subaru Park in that 4-2 win, and the Union kind of got away from that. Does the quick succession of games play a factor into that? Potentially. We heard before this game and even after the game, Jim Curtin complaining about the practice fields. And for people who haven't been to Subaru Park, aren't sure what's going on at Subaru Park, the Union are getting a brand new training complex down at Subaru. They're bringing their academy down there. So They're installing a whole bunch of brand new fields. The Union's field that they've been training on majority of the season has been torn up because, like I said, they're adding a whole bunch of new fields. And the Union 2, when teams came here for the Leagues Cup, they're all practicing on this one field. And the one field has been pretty much worn out. Jim said midweek that the field's borderline unplayable. And he said that he hopes this is the last time that they have to practice on that field. And I've never heard Jim complain like that before. And maybe he feels comfortable calling out the front office because that's exactly what he's doing. Because he got that contract extension, so he has job security. But it is kind of ridiculous, right? That the Union just so happened to do all this construction during the season. You know, teams are coming in for a Leagues Cup, going to be using your facilities, and you only have one practice field, and then you have your second team practicing on that field as well. You don't put pressure on the contractors to get your fields done faster. You don't put out more money, hire more companies to get these fields done faster. And you're going to risk injuries to players. That's your moneymaker. If the Union don't go far in the playoffs, if these players are injured, how are you supposed to sell them? How are you supposed to bring revenue in if they don't go far in the playoffs? Because they've got injured on one practice field that's unplayable. It's kind of unacceptable. Don't you agree? Really unacceptable. I mean, might as well go back to Chester Park if if the Union don't have a playable practice field. It's a joke for a professional soccer team. It really is. I mean, I can't believe, like I said, Jim Curtin complained about that, and now here we are complaining about it on the podcast, and I've seen some people complain about it on social media after Jim mentioned it. It's the little things you don't think about, but it adds up. And maybe that's why we saw Daniel Gazdag grab his knee during the game last night. Why Liam Flach had to come out in the first place because of a groin injury. I don't know. It's a lot of things, right? And I don't think it's Jim Curtin making excuses. I do think it's Jim putting pressure on the front office like, hey, these are professional players. And you're acting worse than a minor league club with tearing up our fields. And this is wearing out our players. Totally unacceptable. And I don't want this episode to be all too negative. And I don't want people thinking I'm being Negadelphia. Because I did get some of that. I forget what game it was, but people were like, oh man, you're being so negative. What a negative episode. And I really tried not to be. I try to be a realist. But I guess that comes out negative at times. So try to keep it negative and positive on the podcast. Doesn't always happen, I suppose. But if you want to look for positives, I mentioned it. The 11th time on the road this season, the Union have conceded first. And it's become so tiring to talk about on the podcast. But to flip it and make that a positive, we did see the Union score to take the game to 1-1 at halftime. And that equalizer scored on the road was the 8th this season for the Union, which is the most in MLS. So they've come from behind 8 times on the road. No other team in MLS has done that. But then the issue becomes again, the Union find a way to blow it yet again and give up that second goal and give up that third goal. So I don't think we can question the fight of this team because they clearly have that fight in them. But how can they stop conceding first on the road? How can they stop allowing teams to retake the lead right after they tie it up? I don't have these answers. I don't think Jim has these answers. I mean, it's got to be a mentality thing, right? Because it's crazy. 2 years ago, this exact same situation was happening. Last season, the Union corrected that. And now this season, it's back again. And so what is it? Because 2 years ago, majority of these players that are currently on the roster were here. And so it's not like these players haven't been here before, because they have. And they fixed it last season. And now those issues are happening once again. So how can these players get back mentally and correct those mistakes? Because that's the only thing I can think that it is a mental issue. That they switch off for whatever reason. We see it all the time. They concede and then they come right back down and have a chance to score. Union had a potential call for a handball last night. Wasn't given. Did that stop them for pushing for the equalizer? No. They get it right before the half with Julian Carranza. But then the second half, 17 minutes later, they concede the second goal. And then 5-6 minutes later, they give up the third. I don't know. I don't have the answers. Do one of you guys? Again, I said that earlier, and I guess if one of us did have the answers, then Jim Curtin's calling us up and hiring us to the coaching staff. It's just disappointing, man, that it happened against Toronto, team that only had 3 wins all season long. And can we talk about the stupid challenge from Jesus Bueno and then the stupid yellow card that Jose Martinez earned? Because that challenge by Bueno on Petrita after Bueno had just got the ball stolen from Petrita and Osorio, that's just dumb. That's a dumb reaction by Jesus Bueno. It's uncalled for. And let's not forget how that play happened. I think this is very important to point out. Jesus Bueno was inside the 18-yard box of Toronto. And then he turns out of the box, dribbles towards the touchline. Why are you going away from goal? Makes no sense. And so he gets the ball stolen off of him. Maybe Osorio fouls Bueno. No foul given. And then he goes angrily and fouls Petrita. Yellow card initially. Go to VAR, overturn it. Here's the red card. And then you have Jose Martinez flying in. He earns a pointless yellow card. And I get it, right? It's his countryman. He loves Jesus Bueno, who, by the way, congrats to both Jose and Jesus Bueno on getting their first call-up to the national team for Bueno. Good to see the national team respecting what Jesus did in League's Cup. And so I get why Jose Martinez is protecting his countryman, his teammate. But it was uncalled for, right? And so now these two guys are going to miss the game against Red Bulls. Liam Flach went out injured, like we talked about early in the game, with a groin injury. We'll see if he's available against New York Red Bulls. And so now you're down 3 players in the midfield. You've loaned out Richard Odada. You loaned out Andres Pereira. What do you do? We've seen when Jim Curtin didn't have the personnel, he goes to a 3-5-2. So do you do that against New York Red Bulls, even though it didn't work out in League's Cup? Do you try to play the diamond? Do you play Bedoya as a 6? Do you play Jack Elliott as a 6? I hope not. Do you play Matt Real as a 6? Jack McGlynn as a 6? play Quinn Sullivan as one of the eights? Matt Real as an eight? Do you not even play the diamond? I don't know. I don't know what Jim Curtin does. Because there's a lot of issues now in that midfield. And that does make me question the depth of this team. And that's something that I brought up maybe a month or two ago, talking about how Ernst Tanner hasn't got the last couple of transfer windows correct. So before we talk about that, because apparently I upset quite a few people when I put together my list of who's been good, who's not been good since 2021. And some people didn't like what I put for Chris Donovan. So we'll get to that here in a second. If you guys don't follow me on Twitter, we'll discuss that. But Jim Curtin also had this to say after the game.
To concede the way we did, it's again, not like us. Usually we make teams earn goals, and when we don't, we're not built to just go end to end and play in these 4-3 games. So it's hard for us, as you guys see, to create chances, to manufacture goals, to manufacture wins. So when we don't score first, it sets us up for difficulties, especially on the road. And again, some uncharacteristic errors. We had guys not have maybe their best night, but in those moments, you can still, be hard to play against. That's usually what we're best at. And tonight we were not hard enough to play against. We're, again, a team that isn't going to step on the field and just win games. We don't have players that the opponent is terrified of. So we all have to collectively be good on the day to get a result. And overall, tonight just wasn't good enough.
And I want to point out something that Jim Curtin said right there, because that's what ties into the whole depth issue. And that's kind of why I put out my tweet this afternoon. He said, we don't have players that opponents are terrified of. We don't have players that the opponents are terrified of. Kind of seems like a shot at the front office, right? Jim Curtin always talks about the 3 pillars, and one of them is 11 cohesive players beat a superstar. And so Jim Curtin has done a really good job making this team, these players, believe that statement. But don't you think that Jim Curtin would warrant a difference maker on this team? Somebody that's obviously not going to disrupt the locker room and have a huge ego, but somebody that's a 1v1 game changer. And he legit admitted they don't have a single player on the roster that can do that. So a little bit of a shot at the players on this roster? Maybe a little bit. But I think, if anything, it's a cry out to the front office. Get it right. And so that's why I want to go over the players that the Union have signed since 2021, because eventually then I went through 2019 up until 2023, because I was like, you know what, why not? So 2021, and everybody knows the players that the Union signed, so I'll try to go over this quickly and not lose you guys. 2021, the Union brought in Stuart Finley, Liam Flach, Greg Ranjensing, Daniel Gazdag, Elvis Powell, Jesus Bueno, Davo, Nate Harriel, Jack McGlynn, Paxton Aronson, Quinn Sullivan, Brendan Craig. I would say Stuart Finley was a good signing. Liam Flach, good signing. Greg, I said question mark. And I'm not saying question mark because he's bad. I'm saying question mark because he never played. He was signed as an emergency goalkeeper, so you can't grade that. Daniel Gazdag, obviously good. Elvis Powell, I say question mark. Didn't play a whole bunch for the Union, so how can you judge that? He's just Bueno. If I would have put this out last year, I think a lot of people would say question mark or a flop, but he's come good. Davo, I said question mark. I'm not calling him a flop. How can you call a player a flop that only played one game, played like 16 minutes? And I get it, right? The argument's going to be, well, you can say he's a flop because he never played. And that's why my question to Union fans, and maybe some of you guys that are listening, maybe you guys want to DM me, maybe you want to email me and get on this as well too. Because I said, question for Union fans, how much is the last couple of transfer windows hurting this team? And then I followed it up saying, after 2021, it seems like there's been a lot of opportunities not given, parentheses, earned, or misses. Your guys' thoughts? Because I think it's easy to say, a lot of these players that are question marks weren't given opportunities. But as Jim Curtin always says, opportunities aren't given. They're earned. They're earned from the practice field. And in a sense, you can say that these players are flops because obviously they didn't earn it in practice. So Davo is a question mark for me because he wasn't given any opportunities, but you can argue he didn't earn it. So that's why he didn't get the opportunity. So you can say that was a miss. I'll listen to people that say that. Nate Harriel, check. Jack McGlynn, check. Paxson, I have that as a question mark because he didn't play enough for the Union. And I know he scored 4 goals, played a little over 30 games. But in my opinion, that's not enough to judge a player. And the talk was always the Union are going to sell Paxton Aronson. So I can't judge his impact with the Union. Quinn Sullivan, question mark. And I know he's played over 50 games, scored 5 goals, I think. But this is a player that's getting played out of position. Looks decent when he comes on, but he's being played out of position. Brendan Craig hasn't earned his opportunity. I don't know what else you want me to say, so that's a question mark as well. 2022, Mikhail Ur, check. Julian Kranza, check. Chris Donovan, I said fail, X. Richard Odata, question mark. Obasa Armia, question mark. Anton Sorensen, question mark. Jeremy Raffanello, question mark. And Chris Donovan's the one that pissed off a lot of people. They said, how can you put an X, call Chris Donovan a fail over someone like Davo, Quinn Sullivan, Jeremy Raffanello? And maybe I'm harsh for saying X, and maybe it's recency bias playing a factor into that. Had a huge indecisive moment against DC United last week. Should have taken the shot instead. Wants a pass to Gazdag, but then the pass gets taken away, so then he has to shoot. Had a clear opportunity to run straight on goal, but he's thinking way too much about it. DC United, he dribbles past Calendar and then skies the ball. There's been a couple other opportunities this season when he gets himself in really good positions, but he's not finishing. So that's why I say he's been a fail. Is it harsh? Yes. And I get it. The reason why Chris Donovan's on this roster is no fault of Chris's. He's on this roster because he's a cheap body. It's not costing them a lot of money. 2, it's poor scouting by the Union to begin with, that they have to go out and sign a player like Chris Donovan because they don't have a great backup striker. And then development. It's been poor. We're trying to produce a striker, and I get that 100% that the striker is the hardest position in the world to develop. But the Union aren't doing this kid any favors. And he's also not doing himself any favors either. I mean, there's no reason why he should be on an MLS roster. That's why we saw Columbus Crew cut him. They said, yeah, you're not good enough. And the union decided to kick the tires on him with Union 2. And he produced enough that they decided, well, you earned a first-team contract. But I look at a player that beat Chris Donovan out in Columbus, Russell Rowe, only 20 years old. Shout out to the former Maryland Terrapin. You know, while we're on that subject, I know the union don't sign college kids, but why aren't they looking at the University of Maryland? Year after year, they produce MLS players. It's not top talent by any means, but they continue to send kids to MLS. Russell Rowe was at Maryland from 2020 to 2021. Then he gets picked up by Columbus Crew. 19 appearances, 21 goals with the Crew's second team. Earns the call up to the Crew's first team. 4 goals in 23 appearances. And this is a guy who beat out Chris Donovan in Columbus. And so then that comes down to poor scouting and poor development by the union. And Chris Donovan's a late bloomer. That's the hope Jim Kirchin's saying. But the opportunities he's been given this season, which is, again, no fault of his own, he's not taking advantage of those opportunities. So that's why I say he's a fail. But he has every opportunity to turn that into a check, for sure. Maybe I would have said question mark if he wouldn't have missed a couple opportunities in recent time. But regardless, he has. Richard, Abasa, Anton, and Jeremy, I can't say they're fails because they haven't been given, they haven't earned their time. And again, like I said earlier, you want to say, well, they haven't been given opportunities because they haven't earned it, so that makes them a fail. All right, I'll listen to you. But a player like Jeremy Raffanello, leading goal scorer for Union 2, how isn't he given playing time over Chris Donovan? It makes no sense. This team lacks a backup 10. You've got one in Jeremy Raffanello, but you're not giving him opportunities. It makes no sense to me. Where's the disconnect? And then in 2023, walking tours, I said fail. Andres Pereira, I say question mark. Haven't seen enough of him. Damian Lowe, I say a check. Good third center back. Not a great starter. Spot starter, yeah, he does well. Starting him consistently, yeah, it's probably going to ask for trouble. And then the 2 new guys that they just signed, Ty Baribo and Alawatu Makanya. You can't judge those guys. Way too early. Can't judge them. Walking tours, I can judge him, though. 100%. Dude's terrible. That's why he was able to leave Montreal. Didn't fit Wilfred Nance's system because they play as a wingback. Didn't fit Hernan Losada's system because he uses wingbacks. And being a wingback, you have to defend, which Joaquin Torres does not do. But at least he's playing on the wing. He comes here to the Union, and the Union magically think, yeah, we have good enough coaching where we can turn him into a 10, be Daniel Gazog's backup, play him as a second striker. And he's not that. I've never seen a player be so afraid to use the non-dominant foot like Joaquin Torres. This dude loses the ball constantly. Everybody knows he will not go on his right. So they always play him to his right. And when he tries to cut to his left, they take the ball away. Everybody knows it's going to cut him from the right-hand side, or to his left. And what really pissed me off about him last night is he lost the ball in the second half, and I'll put this in the goals breakdown video to show you guys what I'm talking about. He loses the ball and then gives up on the play. Okay, you might not be the most skillful player. You might not fit the system, but at least press. Show that you care and play defense. Just don't sit there and pout because you lost the ball. Because that right there is going to get you not brought back to the team next season. So I wonder if the Union noticed that moment. Are they going to have a conversation with Joaquin Torres? So, no. Joaquin Torres has not been good. He's been a fail. But I get it. The Union had GAM to spend. And Ernst Tanner is saying, I trust my coaching staff here in Philadelphia to maybe get something out of a player that doesn't fit our system, but maybe these guys can convert him into something, and that has not been the case. So again, a lot of question marks for these players, and those question marks, I'm saying it's because we haven't seen enough of those players. But again, I'll repeat myself again. If you guys want to make the point and say they haven't been given opportunities because they haven't earned the opportunities, and therefore that makes them a fail, I'm all here for it. But how many more times do you need to see Joaquin Torres to think that he'll come good? Joaquin Torres is so funny because he's the type of player that will watch him go out. Somehow the Union make it to MLS Cup and watch Joaquin Torres score the game-winning goal. And all will be forgiven. We'll all say Joaquin Torres is our favorite player, that he needs a statue made for him. And everybody's going to be celebrating Joaquin Torres. Just like everybody was celebrating Marco Fabian because he scored the game-winning goal against New York Red Bulls for the Union's first ever playoff win. And so, because of that, now Marco Fabian's not been a fail, right? Was one of Marco Fabian's harshest critics because of how lazy he was. But as soon as he scored that game-winning goal against New York Red Bulls, this was an outstanding signing. Great signing by Ernst and Jay. Shook him in to pay the money, to pay him, $2 million, I think the Union were paying him. Got him on a free from Frankfurt. And so, you guys go ahead and do the assessment that I just did. A lot of fails, a lot of question marks. Is that bad scouting by the Union? Losing Kyle McCarthy and Chris Albright, it hurts a lot. Losing a couple other scouts along the way doesn't help, for sure. But there's been a massive drop-off from the 2019-2020 signings to what they've been the last two transfer windows. I don't think anybody can deny that. But who's the blame fall on? Because obviously somebody's to blame, right? There's a disconnect someplace. And I'm going to give a shout out here to Sully. I believe you're the one who at least said this, Sully. On Twitter, he said, this whole Union era that we're in right now from 2019 to current, is it all for nothing if the Union don't win a trophy? It's a really good question. And some people were giving Sully crap on Twitter for this. But I think I agree, right? It is a waste. Only one trophy to show for it. A Supporter Shield championship in a condensed season. Yes, this club has had multiple CCC berths. Those are important. Yes, they reached the semifinals twice in CCC. Yes, reaching the Eastern Conference Finals and winning one of those is important. Yes, making MLS Cup is important. But so is winning trophies. And these players aren't going to be around too much longer. And once this era ends, because yes, it will end. Spoiler alert. If they only have one trophy to show for it, is it a waste? It's a really good question. Ask yourself that right now. If this era ends with Glesnes, Elliott, Wagner, Martinez, Carranza, Bedoya, Gazlag, all leaving, and their time together, they only won one trophy, was that era a waste? I think absolutely it is. Because the whole reason you play games isn't for victories. It's to win trophies. Why did Harry Kane leave Tottenham? It's because he was tired of not winning trophies with Spurs. What happens with Gareth Bale? I'm sorry to bring up that name. Or Luka Modric. As soon as they leave Spurs, they go to Real Madrid. They win trophies. Why did Steve Gerrard want to leave Liverpool back in the day and go to Chelsea? To have the opportunity to win trophies. And we're talking about Liverpool, that's fine. How many of you, I know there's a lot of you that are listening to the podcast, are Liverpool fans. And I've seen this argument online by Liverpool fans, saying that the Salah, Mane, and Firmino era feels like it was wasted a little bit. That they could have won even more trophies than what they won. Now, I don't think that era is wasted because they won I'm going to say CONCACAF Champions League, the Champions League. They won the Premier League. They won the Carling Cup, the FA Cup, if I'm not mistaken. So they've won trophies with that golden era of a Liverpool team. And they would have won more if it wasn't for Manchester City being as dominant as Liverpool were during that era. But the Union only have one trophy to show for. And it was in a shortened season. So that trophy is always going to have an asterisk on it. So is it a waste? I think it's a fair question. And I do think Sully has a point. If this era wins with one trophy, it's a fail. Is it harsh to say? Absolutely. But you play this game to win things. And that's something that the Union haven't done. That's why so many of you guys are upset that the Union don't take the US Open Cup seriously. Because you guys want that trophy so bad. And the Union, time after time, go out in the first round of the US Open Cup. That's an theoretically easy opportunity to win a trophy. And now you have a CCC berth because you won the Open Cup. But the Union don't take it serious. Theoretically, you have an easy chance to win a trophy with CCC with a couple games to be played. And a couple semifinal berths, that's great and everything, but no trophies. You don't get a trophy for that. You don't get a trophy for finishing third in League's Cup. So I know I'm going to upset a lot of people with saying that if this team doesn't win a trophy this season and this era ends with only one trophy, that it was a waste. I know I'm going to upset people with that, but it's true. How do you waste this much talent and only have one trophy to show for it? It's unbelievable. So enough of my rant. Let's go ahead and end this episode with 3 stars and then Blunder of the week. So 3 stars, we'll go over this quickly on the night. Ale Bedoya, 2 chances created, 2 out of 2 tackles won, 1 interception, 2 ball recoveries, 4 out of 4 aerials won. Bedoya gave his all. Always does every time he steps up onto the pitch. He's a player that was locked on. How can we instill LA's mentality in the rest of this group? If you had a full 11 of Ale Bedoyas, you're probably winning a couple of trophies, right? Definitely. Number 2 on the night, Julian Carranza. 1 goal. And yeah, he had a huge opportunity like we talked about earlier on. Kills me that he missed that. But at least he's making the right runs, correct? Number 1 on the night, Kai Wagner. And I know, again, I talked about Wagner getting torched by Bernadeschi in this game. total of 3 times. But he did create 5 chances, had a expected assist rate of 0.71, 3 out of 3 tackles won, 2 blocks, 1 interceptions, 4 ball recoveries. So despite getting dribbled by 3 times, there were moments in this game where Kai Wagner did well against Bernadeschi. So at the end of the day, was this the greatest Union game? No. Does it hurt that the Union lost to Toronto? Absolutely. Is this a game to panic about? I don't think so. It's a little bit weird because when you look at the last 5 games that the Union played away at BMO Field, I think the Union scored the first goal in 4 of those games. And they still wind up going 1-1-3 in those games. Despite scoring the first goal, they gave up the first goal last night, and, well, it doesn't matter. They still lose. So, disappointing. That's all I can say. Really disappointing. But let's go ahead and do Blunder of the Week. We haven't done this in a while, and I told you guys, we got a new soundbite, and I can't wait to use this soundbite. So, Blunder of the Week is going to go to 97.5 The Fanatic, the Union's radio partner. Over the last couple weeks, they continuously tag the wrong Union Twitter handles, despite fans constantly tagging them in and making them aware that they're using the wrong handle. So what do we think of that, Jim?
Yeah, not good.
Man, I love that. We're going to get so much use out of that. And I understand why the Union left Fox Sports The Gambler, because the team would have had a bigger reach with 97.5. But to not even do the most basic of all basic things right and get the team's Twitter handle right, that is poor. How are you going to be the radio partner and do your partner dirty like that? And every time we see they tweet about the Union game on their station, they always start it or end it with #ad. I don't see them doing that when they're promoting the 76ers and Flyers. So why are you doing that with the Union? You're treating them worse than a minor league team. Union are better than Flyers. They're definitely in the conversation for 5 or 5. And you partner with this team and you're treating them like this with something so basic, and it's not happened once, twice, 3, or 4 times. It has happened more than 4 times. And you get called out for it every single time. And you guys don't care. You guys don't care. As long as you get the money, that's all what matters to you. So there is Blunder of the Week with the help of Jim Curtin in his not good moment. But if you guys aren't following the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow @FreeKickPod, wherever you get your podcast, The Free Kick. And be sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you guys get the latest podcasts when they drop. And check out the YouTube page for the goal breakdowns, missed opportunities I'll break down, youtube.com/FreeKickPod. Thank you guys for liking the videos, for subscribing, and for sharing the videos. It goes a long way. And this might not sound like a lot, but since my last DC United upload, we've got over 100 views. That's great for me. Got 3 new followers, so you guys are doing a good job. It's all on you guys. Nothing I'm doing, but because you guys are sharing that. So you guys are continuing spreading the word for this podcast and all the content that I'm dropping you guys. So we will have a new episode on Monday, I would assume. Maybe Tuesday. Try to get that released on Labor Day for you guys on Monday, though. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is The Free Kick Podcast.